now.
On a fine autumn morning in early October, the main thoroughfare of St. Catherine's, Suffolk, was unusually busy. A constant stream of traffic surged forward. Errand boys on bicycles swung in and out among delivery vans, farmers in lorries, businessmen in cars. In the middle of all this confusion sat a large, shining Bentley. It was rather conspicuous, but the occupants didn't appear to worry much. Behind the wheel sat John Steed, bowler at a jaunty angle and a well-manicured hand resting on the steering wheel. Beside him, carefully dressed in a tweed two-piece suit and looking extremely efficient, sat Mrs. Peel. Steed whistled tunelessly.
What a pretty little place.
Can't see much of it from this angle. It's not so little either.
Shall we be staying long?
I hope not.
Oh, be rather nice. I think I'd like a whole weekend here. Put up at one of those country inns. Lots of healthy walks in the rain, evenings spent in front of the open fire. Bed early reading a harmless novel, that sort of thing. No chance?
No chance.
Then what exactly are we doing here?
Spy catching, Mrs. Peel. The appointment is for 12 noon. Unless we get out of this darn traffic soon, we'll be too late. Jimmy Merlin is never late. I only wish he were. I only wish he was the late Jimmy Merlin.
Episode 1 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel lay a trap, only to fall into it and not realize it until the morning after. John Steed managed eventually to find a suitable parking spot, and with the hands of the parish clock pointing to 11:45, hurried Mrs. Peel along a cobbled street and into a large red brick building. From the various plaques and brass notices outside, it was clear that it housed a number of offices belonging to small business concerns. Steed let himself into an office on the second floor, marked the Poston Trading Company. Judging from the various articles, such as crates of toys, fishing tackle, electrical appliances, and gardening equipment, the Poston Trading Co. dealt in practically everything. Steed placed a small briefcase on a garden bench and moved swiftly to the window.
What a curiously jumbled place for a rendezvous.
No one else is likely to look for us here. It's neutral ground.
It's no ground at all. Not much carpet either. What makes you think that this Jimmy Merlin will turn up? Why are you so sure?
Money. Jimmy Merlin would sell his own aged grandmother if the price were right.
Well, if she's that old, I shouldn't think he'd get many offers.
He'll come. I've baited the trap well enough.
Speaking of bait...
Mrs. Peel removed a large fishing rod with villainous-looking hooks from an easy chair and collapsed into it.
Jimmy Merlin worked for us once, didn't he?
Us, them, they, practically anyone you can name. Whoever's willing to pay his price.
A double agent?
Multi-quadruple would be more accurate. The artiste superior of the double-double-double cross. But this time we've got him. I've waited so long for this meeting, I've got him at last.
If he shows up.
He's showing up.
Steed looked from the window down into the street. Walking on the pavement on the opposite side was a tall, athletic figure, immaculately dressed in a country suit and a green felt hat and walking stick. Without a glance upwards, he crossed at the traffic lights and made his way towards the building.
Jimmy Merlin, all right.
Steed left the window and moved swiftly to the bench where he'd placed his briefcase. Opening it, he removed a revolver and hastily checked it.
Firearms? That's not like you, Steed. Most unusual.
Well, this is a very unusual case. One doesn't take chances with Merlin. Not one. He's as devious, tricky, and cunning as anyone you'll ever meet. And dangerous. Deadly dangerous.
Any particular part that I should play?
Just play it cool and watch him all the time. Don't underestimate him as a killer, and don't be taken in by his particular brand of charm. Shh. This must be him now.
Who's he expecting to meet?
One of them.
To do a deal?
That's right.
What kind of a deal? Shh.
The footsteps stopped outside the door. The silhouette of a man appeared against the opaque glass panel. There was a pause and a knock.
No, not a move.
The knock was repeated, and then the silhouette moved away.
He's going away.
From a cash transaction? Never. Shh, look out.
door crashed open. Merlin hurtled into the room. Steed leapt forward and grabbed him round the neck. Mrs. Peel grasped Merlin's right hand and held on to what she thought was a gun.
I told you he was tricky.
You're going to be disappointed, you know.
Mrs. Peel found herself holding a pipe. She closed the door.
You don't look the smoking type. Hello, Steed. Hardly expected to see you here.
Hello, Merlin. I know what you were expecting, Merlin. See, I arranged the whole thing.
Wow. Did you now? Efficient, and I think you mentioned the word tricky. Well, it has a nice element of surprise. I particularly admire your choice of partner. Fast and quite lovely. Remarkably so. How do you do? Jimmy Merlin is the name.
How do you do? Steed didn't exaggerate about you.
Oh, please, don't believe everything you hear.
About your brand of charm, I mean.
Forewarned is forearmed, Miss...
Mrs.
Ah, what a pity. But nowadays I understand that doesn't matter all that much. Well, Steed, what now?
I refuse to believe that you're not carrying a gun, Merlin, and so...
With a swift series of movements, Steed frisked the man and found...
2 guns. 2-gun Merlin, eh?
Yes, was brought up on old-fashioned westerns. Care to shoot it out in the main street, Steed?
Too much traffic.
I see. Well, you now have the whole armory. What next?
I'm taking you in, Merlin. And where you're going to stay for a long, long time.
Oh, come now, Steed. On what basis can you possibly...
On the basis that you broke into a secret establishment and stole a capsule containing a newly developed sleeping gas. A knockout gas of extraordinary proportions. You've got the test samples.
Where's your evidence?
You came here expecting to sell that gas capsule. So I imagine you've brought the evidence with you. Do you mind putting your hands up? Thank you, Mrs. Peel.
Mrs. Peel moved in on Merlin and began searching his pockets.
Nothing so far.
So glad to see you haven't lost your touch, Steed. You're relentless and as thorough as ever. I've really got to take my hat off to you.
As he spoke, Jimmy Merlin reached up and removed his green felt hat. In the band of the hat was a glass capsule. Steed jerked his gun up, but too late, the capsule fell to the floor and shattered. A visible amount of gas swirled out.
No.
Steed lumbered forward to grab Merlin. Merlin jerked away and clamped his hat over his nose and mouth. Steed's eyes began to glaze. He started to sway and fell heavily. Merlin, laughing, muffled under his hat, dashed to the door. He opened it.
No!
But Mrs. Peel made one last desperate lunge. She hit the door, slamming it shut again, and then collapsed in a heap. Merlin grasped the door handle. Mrs. Peel's body was in the way. In using both hands, he was forced to drop his hat. Within seconds, he also succumbed to the fumes of gas, and groaning, fell to the floor.
Oh.
The telephone began to ring. But no one was awake to answer it. John Steed opened his eyes. They refused to focus. He was lying on the floor, that much he knew. He raised himself on one elbow with a great effort, clambered slowly to his feet, and staggered to the window. Hastily he opened it. Steed breathed deeply a few times, and then turned to look back into the room. Mrs. Peel was curled up in front of the door, fast asleep. She was having a pleasant dream, a half-smile touching her lips. Alongside her was the form of Jimmy Merlin. He also appeared to be enjoying a deep, refreshing sleep. Steed glanced at his watch.
7 o'clock? But it's daylight. It can't be 7 in the evening.
Then he looked at the date panel.
21st? But it was the 20th when it all happened. The 21st? 7 in the morning of the 21st? We've lost nearly a whole day.
Steed moved over to Mrs. Peel and tried to rouse her.
Mrs. Peel! Mrs. Peel! Emma, come on, wake up! Wake up! That's no good. Both out of the wine. Telephone. Operator? Operator? Oh. One thing is certain. I can't go off without Merlin. Now, let's see.
Steed opened his briefcase and removed a pair of handcuffs. He quickly snapped one round Merlin's wrist and the other round his own. Then he proceeded to slap Merlin's face until there was a vague, sleepy response.
Was it?
Merlin, we're going to take a little ride.
Right.
You and I.
Don't want to ride. Want to sleep.
Just a short trip, you and me. I've got you, and you aren't going to get away, so no more tricks.
Sleepy. Well, sleep.
You will, just as soon as I've got you tucked up in a nice, cozy little cell. All by yourself. Now, come on.
With a superhuman effort, Steed managed to drag Merlin to his feet and out of the door. They both stumbled down the flights of stairs and out into the roadway. The street was deserted, but Steed literally had his hands full. He hardly noticed. At length, they got to Steed's car.
Now, come on, here we are.
What the devil's all this about, Steve? Where are we going?
I told you. Surely you haven't forgotten already.
Yeah, still half asleep. Oh, yes, the capsule, I remember.
Well, just relax. If you're at all interested, you've slept since noon yesterday, and it's now 7 o'clock the next morning. Right, here. Get in and shift over to the far seat.
Right. Aye. See, we're joined together in something other than matrimony. These handcuffs really necessary, Steve?
In my opinion, yes. You're too canny to be left alone.
Speaking of being left alone, are you aware, Steve, that there's no one else in this market town of St. Catherine's? The place is quite deserted. Listen.
You're right. Not even the sound of traffic.
Something's happened, Steed. It's not me being canny. The whole thing's quite the reverse. It's very uncanny, indeed.
Now, in a cobbled street in the market town of St. Catherine's, two men were climbing into a car. They were handcuffed together. One of them was John Steed, the other, Jimmy Merlin.
Now get in and shift over to the other seat.
All right. See, we're joined together in something other than holy matrimony, Steed. These handcuffs really necessary?
In my opinion, yes. You're too canny to be left alone.
Speaking of being left alone, are you aware, Steed, that there's no one else in this market town of St. Catherine's? The place is quite deserted. Listen.
You're right. Not even the sound of traffic. The place is quite deserted.
Something's happened, Steed. And it's not me being canny. The whole thing's quite the reverse. It's very uncanny. Indeed.
Episode 2 in this story, in which John Steed has a hard time holding on to his prisoner, but Mrs. Peel blissfully sleeps through the morning after. John Steed had at last got his hands on Jimmy Merlin, a treacherous double agent who was trying to sell a new sleeping gas to the enemy. But unfortunately, in their confrontation, a glass capsule of the gas had broken, knocking out Steed, Merlin, and Mrs. Peel for a whole day. The next morning, Steed had come to and been unable to raise help over the telephone. He'd handcuffed Merlin to his own wrist, and they'd gone out into the streets of St. Catherine's. But Merlin was right. Something about the town was very, very uncanny.
Not a sound, not a person to be seen. Yesterday this time, the place was filled with traffic.
Yes, it is strange, I admit. But, well, I can drive with one hand. Let's get going and find out.
Where are we going?
I told you. Well, you haven't forgotten.
Oh, my head. I'm still so sleepy.
It's your own fault. You smashed the capsule. I'm a little wide awake myself. Well, relax. I'd try to appreciate the view if I were you. It may be your last chance in a long time.
The car gathered speed. But as Steed drove down the deserted streets, he became more and more troubled. Something was very wrong. He stopped at the nearest phone booth, dragged Merlin from the car, and dialed a security emergency number.
5, 9, 9, 9, 9.
Not even anyone awake at security, huh?
Might have guessed that you'd know the number.
Never had occasion to use it, of course. Oh, just can't raise outside help at all, can you, Steed, old boy?
I'll manage somehow.
Not doing so good so far, if I may be allowed an observation.
Come on, Merlin.
I have no option. But yet again, I say, where to?
Back in the car, Steed continued to drive round St. Catherine's. He didn't get very far.
Never get through there. That truck's right across the road. Strange. Both driver and passenger doors are hanging wide open. There's still no one about.
There's got to be.
I'm trying to wait the dead.
Well, come on. We'll walk, then.
Steed forced Merlin out of the car, and together they both examined the deserted truck.
No key in the ignition. I'd be daft enough to leave a truck like that.
Been like it some time. Radiator's ice cold. I say, Steed, sudden thought, for what it's worth.
What is it?
It's all in the mind. We have been strangely affected by the gas. After all, it's not been tried out much before. It must have effects of hallucination. It really isn't happening at all. We're just dreaming it all. It's all in the mind. That's it.
That idea isn't worth anything at all, Merlin. We're here, right enough, and these handcuffs are for real. Now try again.
I can't. Admit I'm as baffled as you. Doesn't make sense. I wish you hadn't done it.
What?
Woken me up. I was having such lovely dreams. This is a nightmare.
There's got to be an explanation. Come on.
I say, I suppose there's no chance of doing it, do you?
I don't think so.
Let's face it, Steed. This thing's greater than both of us. You can't work it out alone. Neither can I. Why not take these blasted handcuffs off and let's work together?
No chance.
Not if it's really worth your while.
Keep talking and walking.
20,000. Swiss bank. No names, no strings.
No deal.
30,000.
Pounds?
Yes, pounds sterling.
Oh, sorry, old chap, I only deal in guineas. Look, on the pavement. A boy's bicycle overturned. Kiddies' toys all flung down as though there were a sudden panic. What could have disturbed them in their play?
I could throw in a yacht.
I got one. Come on.
My private plane, perhaps?
No use for it.
String of Arab ponies, then?
I don't like them.
What about a house? House in France.
Which part?
Saint-Tropez. Splendid condition.
I prefer the north, myself.
No, for pity's sake, Steed, isn't there anything you want?
Yes, there is. There's something I want very much.
What?
You behind bars. Now, come on, step up.
They continued to walk the streets, but the whole district was the same. Not a soul about. Evidence of former activity was there aplenty. But whatever the people of St. Catherine's had been doing, they'd abandoned it. Then, from the end of the street, there came a sound. It was a closed van, moving very slowly. On the roof of the van, a round ring area slowly rotated.
There, activity at last. Come on.
Steed dragged Merlin forward, and the two men broke into a mad dash.
Not a sign.
It's odd. It was moving so slowly. Thought we'd catch it easily.
Well, at least we know we aren't alone here.
Hey, look, Steed. The bank. It's open. Doors wide open. If I'm not mistaken, aren't they banknotes on the steps drifting about in the breeze?
This is getting curiouser and curiouser.
Well, at least things have taken a profitable turn. Let's take a look inside. Manager of this place will get a rocket for this. Talk about safe as the Bank of England. Look at that.
Safe wide open. Notes and coins on the teller's counter. It's like everywhere else, deserted. They all must have left in a devil of a hurry.
Something's wrong. Very, very wrong.
That is obvious. But what has caused this? Hello? Hello, anyone here?
Has the world come to an end? They forgot to tell us. Hey, look, the date. Calendar above the far wall. 21st.
Tuesday the 21st. I told you earlier. You must have still been asleep. We've lost a whole day.
Not a public holiday, is it?
No. Anyway, a holiday wouldn't explain why the streets are empty. This place wouldn't be open on a public holiday.
Deserted.
Abandoned is a better word.
I've got it.
What?
They've all gone to the moon.
The quickest launch ever. No time for preparations. Left in haste.
The whole town's empty, Steed. Only sign of life was that van. I say, do you think that sleeping gas that knocked us out, maybe it's more powerful than we thought? Sped right through the town, put everyone out.
And their bodies just evaporated?
You know, it's really rather ironic.
What is?
Well, you know what they say, one man's meat is another man's poison? You've got me, Steed, but there's no one to hand me over to.
True, but the operative phrase is, I've still got you.
Yes. Yes, at the moment. You know, I hate street brawls, but after all, we aren't in a street at the moment, and so...
Merlin swept Steed's feet from under him. They crashed to the floor among the banknotes. Merlin intent on knocking out Steed. But Steed recovered, rolled on top of Merlin, and firmly pinioned his shoulders to the floor.
Oh, no, you don't. Don't try that ever again.
Can't promise.
Listen.
Marching feet. Sounds like soldiers.
Come on, get to your feet. Come, mistress.
Out in the street, ahead of the marching men, a small, bespectacled, middle-aged man was running for dear life.
No!
The man was John Cartney, and he was being hunted. Hurriedly, he found an alleyway that led to a garage. He stopped, panting, and tugged at the door. It opened. Cartney rushed in and slammed it to. He stood there, a trembling, sweating, terrified creature. Then there was a sudden noise.
What?
Stay where you are and die like a man.
No. Please, no.
Fine, Marty.
No.
From behind the figure of the rugged-faced trooper who confronted him, Cartney saw 3 other troopers step forward.
No, please. I can explain everything. You're mistaken.
Take aim.
No.
Fire!
Steed and Merlin heard the shots and without a word ran towards the garage. When they arrived, the doors were wide open. On the floor lay the body of John Cartney, very professionally killed.
He won't be able to tell us anything.
Look what he has tied round his neck, Steed. A chunk of cardboard.
Yes, and on it written one word, looter.
Now.
Firing party.
No, please,
Firing party.
I can explain
Take
everything.
aim.
No.
Fire!
John Steed and Jimmy Merlin, handcuffed together, were in the street outside. They heard the shots from the deserted garage and ran towards it. When they arrived, the doors of the garage were wide open. On the floor lay the body of John Cartney.
Well, he won't be able to tell us what it's all about, Merlin.
Hey, Steed, look, tied round his neck, a chunk of cardboard.
Yes, and on it written one word, looter.
Episode 3 of this story, in which John Steed tenaciously clings to treacherous Jimmy Merlin and tries to find out just what is going on the morning after. effects of the sleeping gas wore off as the morning wore on. But John Steed still couldn't make sense of what was happening in the market town of St. Catherine's. He'd found the whole place quite deserted, apart from the sounds of marching feet and one elusive radio van. In fact, the first person he and Jimmy Merlin saw that day was a dead man.
Shot for looting. Doesn't make sense.
Nothing does this morning. Mind you, I was sorely tempted back there in the bank.
That the reason you tried to jump me and get away, Merlin? The sight of that open safe?
Not really, Steed. I play for far bigger stakes than can be held in a town bank.
You're not going to be playing for any kind of stakes in future. You're going inside a well-guarded jail if it's the last thing I do.
Careful, old boy. It could turn out that way.
Don't try anything.
I wish I could think of something to try. But back to the subject in hand. What about him, the dead man?
Well, let's examine the body.
Why is it so important to find out who he is?
You'll never know.
Want to send flowers to his widow or something?
Just shut up and cooperate for once. Come on, let's go through his pockets.
Steed and Merlin knelt by the body and carefully searched its clothing. Steed found a wallet.
This says Harold Thomas Cartney, 4 Lymeton Crescent, Ipswich. Cartney. Harold Cartney. Now, that seems to ring a bell.
The only bell it rings to me is an alarm bell. Look, Steed, neither of us knows what's going on in this desolate place, but we do know that people are shooting each other.
One person has been shot.
So far. But when people start shooting at each other, that's when Mrs. Merlin's youngest son, Jimmy, starts getting out.
All in good time. I want to find out why it's all going on.
Does it matter why?
I think it matters very much indeed. Well, nothing more to be found out from Mr. Harold Thomas Cartney. Come on, let's go.
Now, that's better. Back to your car, turn it round, and head on back to London. If there's no one there, I'll know I've gone mad.
Not back to London.
Steed, you obviously like dicing with death more than I do. Now, let's be sensible. Either we make a complete break and get back and away from all this, or we sit tight in this garage until the whole wretched business sorts itself out.
We are not running away.
Well, then let's stay here. It'll be safer to sit tight here and...
I agree. It would be infinitely safer.
Well, then.
But we are leaving right now.
But why? Where to, Steed?
Emma Peel. Do you remember Mrs. Peel? You said that you particularly admired my choice of partner. Now, the lovely creature you turned your oily charms upon before you busted that capsule that knocked us all out.
Ah, yes. Mrs. Peel. Presumably she's still sleeping it off.
Presumably. But when she wakes, she's going to be alone and very, very vulnerable. So no more talk. Come on.
Steed dragged the protesting Merlin from the garage and into the silent streets. While this was going on, a small squad of soldiers marched down a street on the other side of the town. At the head of them was Sergeant Hearn, the man in charge of the firing squad. He halted his men outside a large, imposing building.
Halt!
Sergeant Hearn made his way through a yard of parked army trucks, passing a plaque that read Eastern Hemisphere Trade Commission, and pushing open a door that bore the symbol of the skull and crossbones and a warning of radioactivity. He made his way down to a deep cellar. The normally dim, dank steps were illuminated by brilliant lights. A collection of about half a dozen army officers and warrant officers, all wearing protective clothing, gathered round a focal point at the far end of the cellar. They were working on a gleaming mass of scientific apparatus.
Let me see those equations. Yes, sir.
The brigadier, standing in a position of prominence befitting his authority, studied the clipboard that was handed to him. Major Parsons, standing stiffly at his side, noticed Hearn descending the steps. He moved over to him.
Well, Sergeant?
All quiet on top, sir.
Good, good. Any problems?
One, sir.
A report. Was it serious? What occurred?
Oh, don't worry, sir. We dealt with him. No fuss, sir.
What's this? What's wrong?
Sir, Sergeant Hearn, we ran into a spot of bother up top, sir.
Report, Sergeant.
Sir, while carrying out a street surveillance, we ran across an unauthorized person in the area. I arrested him and summarily dealt with him according to my orders, sir. I shot him as a looter.
Who was he?
Sir?
This man you shot. Didn't you get his identity?
Well, no, sir.
Well, then do so!
Yes, sir.
Right away, Sergeant, right away.
Sir.
Nobody stayed on in this area without good reason. I want to know why and who. This applies to everyone found up top. See that order is carried out, Major. At once.
Some while after that, Steed and Jimmy Merlin were cautiously making their way back to the Poston Trading Company, where they hoped to find Mrs. Peel still sleeping.
Nothing so far.
Yeah, got to be careful.
You know, Steve, this is darn ridiculous. What are we doing, snooping about like a couple of Boy Scouts on tracking practice?
Being prepared isn't a bad motto in these circumstances. I wonder who this can be.
It was Sergeant Hearn, on his way back to the garage.
Quick, up the steps into the bank.
Steed and Merlin scuttled up the steps of the bank they had previously visited. Inside, they made their way to the rear door. Too bad. It was locked.
We've got to get out of here.
Too bad. Too late.
Hold it! Stay where you are! Right. Taking advantage of the emergency, eh?
Emergency?
Made a break from somewhere, have you? Right, forward, men. Cover them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Perhaps if you could just explain what all this is about.
Silence!
Surely at least tell us what's happened and then...
If this man speaks again, shoot him. Stop! Orders are that anyone found within the area shall be searched. The Brigadier wants a complete check. Right, now let's see what you've got in your pockets.
Hearn began searching the two men. On Jimmy Merlin, he found nothing. On Steed, 2 wallets.
John Steed and Harold Cartney. Now, which are you?
John Steed.
Silence. Oh, you took this from the dead man back there in the garage, didn't you? Didn't you?
As a matter of fact, old chap, yes. You see, I'm attached
Looting. Both of you. What's your name?
Merlin. Now, look here, Sergeant. I've had nothing to do with this. Nothing whatsoever. You see, this man, Steed...
You have both been found guilty of looting.
Guilty?
I didn't see a judge.
I am the judge. The sentence is death. It will be carried out immediately.
I say, he means it, Steed. He really means it.
Firing party will take up position.
Yes, sir.
Oh, dear, we can't let this happen, handcuffs can be useful for other things than holding people together, you know.
Right, silence. Right, firing squad.
Now, I think, Steed.
Right.
As one man, Steed and Merlin leapt forward. They dropped their handcuffs over the sergeant's neck, pulling him back in front of them and nearly strangling him in the process.
Right. Drop those rifles. Tell them, Sergeant. Tell them we mean business.
Tell him, Sergeant.
Do as he says.
Right. Stand clear. Come on, Merlin. The door.
Steed and Merlin moved off to the doors, dragging the sergeant between them. When they reached them, they roughly shoved him back into the bank. He sprawled on the floor as they slammed the doors closed and ran towards the armored car. Steed started her up, and they roared off. A burst of shooting from the troopers followed them.
Steed, for pity's sake, let's get out of here. We can make it easily enough. Those men were trying to kill us.
But they didn't.
I don't find that encouraging. Well, Steed, let me off the hook. Undo these blasted handcuffs and let me take my chance alone.
Wouldn't hear of it, my dear chap.
They're after us. I'm too young to die.
You're over 21.
If I were over 80, I'd feel the same. Steed, where are we going?
We're sneaking back.
Sneaking back? Give me 3 good reasons why.
1, Mrs. Peel is still there. 2, I want to know what's going on.
I said 3 reasons.
The third one? A terribly obstinate man. How's that?
It's not good enough.
They were the British Army. The sergeant and that firing squad. They were the British Army. And he mentioned a state of emergency. Houses empty, cars abandoned, martial law, it all fits. Now, I'm not moving out of St. Catherine's until I find out what sort of emergency. You got that? Understand?
I only understand one thing. If they don't kill me, you will, with careless driving. I promise, Mother, if I ever get out of this alive, I'm going straight. And that's a promise I've never made before.
In the dark cellar of a special administration building at St. Catherine's, the Brigadier and Major Parsons were disturbed in their work and startled by Sergeant Hearn, who entered with unseemly haste, tore across the floor, almost forgetting the soldierly formalities, and skidded to a stop in front of them. He just remembered to throw a salute before he said,
Intruders in the area, sir. Unauthorized. 2 men. Got away, sir.
Got away?
Report, Sergeant.
And make it coherent.
Yes, sir. 2 unauthorized men, sir. Stole a vehicle, sir.
Well, they can't get very far that way. All roads are blocked. Which way were they headed?
I'm not sure, sir. I think they went to the northern part of the town.
Know who they were?
One man's name is Steed, the other Merlin.
Merlin? That's all we need, a blasted sorcerer. Major!
Sir?
You had better handle this. A full platoon.
Yes, sir.
I use method in tracking them. Cross-plot the entire area and comb every inch.
Yes, sir. Do you want them alive for questioning, sir?
I most certainly do not. Shoot them. After a proper firing squad has been convened. That's the way to deal with them. Give them a fair trial and shoot them.
Episode 4 of this story, in which John Steed and Jimmy Merlin find themselves an ally, but still can't unravel the mystery of what's going on in St. Catherine's the morning after. John Steed was determined. He'd found Jimmy Merlin, and regardless of what was going on, he wasn't going to release him. Admittedly, this was a severe setback. He wasn't sure when Merlin would try to make a break for it. It meant watching him and whatever was round the next corner. And driving the armoured car was difficult with only one hand. Steed decided to park the thing.
What's the idea? I'd hoped you were going to get us out of here.
I've told you, I'm not leaving Mrs. Peel. Be realistic, Merlin. If this whole town is under martial law, they'll have barriers up on all the roads out of it.
I suppose that's true. But look, Steed, I'm your prisoner, right?
Right.
And I'm your responsibility, right?
Right.
Then you're supposed to take care of me, right?
Wrong.
But the rules say...
There are no rules in this business, Merlin. You should know that. Now, you want to find out what's going on, don't you?
No.
Well, there you are, then. Come on.
Steed dragged Merlin out of the parked car. They walked stealthily down the street and round the corner. There, not more than a few yards away, was a radio van, the one they'd seen earlier. The round circular aerial had stopped revolving. This made Steed wonder if there was anyone in the van. He pulled Merlin forward.
I'm going to try the rear doors.
Steed reached the van, grasped the rear door handle, and jerked it open.
Oh, well, you might have knocked.
What's up, miss? Shall I clobber them?
Yates, a stocky young cockney, jumped from the van and approached Steed and Merlin. He held a large, heavy spanner in one hand.
No good. It's a fair cop. I suppose it isn't any use asking you two not to destroy the film. Remember, it is more than a scoop, it's history. Confiscate it if you want. Lock it away, but please don't destroy it. After all, I could put this in...
The girl stopped. She noticed the handcuffs that linked Steed and Merlin together.
What on earth's going on here?
I wish someone would tell us.
You mean you honestly don't know?
No idea.
Miss.
You know, Yates, I think they're telling the truth. But it's fantastic.
It's not that fantastic. We've been knocked out for nearly 24 hours. Whatever has happened here at St. Catherine's happened then.
And we missed it.
Well, it's still incredible that you don't know. The whole world knows.
I do hate to think that the whole world has me at a disadvantage.
I won't tell you what's happened. I can do better than that. I can show it to you. Climb into the van.
No.
It's all right. This is no trickery. I'm on the level.
All right. Come on, Merlin.
It was tiny and cramped inside the van. Yates moved to a TV monitor at the far end and began flicking switches.
I'm Jenny Thurston, by the way. Television News. We came in to cover the event, and then, when everyone was ordered out of the area...
We stayed on. Against orders, of course. We've been sneaking around the streets, picking up what shots we can. OK, miss. Ready for the playback. Switch it on.
Right. This is the newscast you would have seen if you hadn't been asleep all day yesterday.
This is Jenny Thurston.
I'm standing here in the heart of St. Catherine's. Cars are still pouring out of the town in their thousands, but jams are building up, and already owners are abandoning the private vehicles and hurrying away to the special coaches standing by for evacuation.
It was difficult for me to do this commentary. So much was going on.
Special
Very
troops,
Thank you.
troops enter the town. A state of emergency has been proclaimed. Within 30 minutes, this town and the surrounding 50 square miles surrounding it will be evacuated. It will become a ghost area, empty save for the troops. The area is under martial law as from now. Here you see the man who will remain in sole command, Brigadier Hansen.
Oh, Hansen's in
Easy there, man. Yes, miss, what is it?
Television news. Brigadier, are you satisfied that everyone has been warned to leave the area?
We've called on everyone. Yes, I'm satisfied.
And how do you feel about staying on?
I'm a soldier. I have a duty. Clear that truck! Get moving there, man! We've others arriving! Move! What I would like to stress to the nation is that there is no need to panic. We have everything under control. We know what we must do, and we shall do it. Excuse me. You man! Move that truck!
He knows what he must do.
Get that thing down!
Brave words from a brave man.
Gently, her!
And there is the commission building. In there lies the task he must tackle, and the whole world will be waiting with bated breath to see the outcome of that task. If he succeeds, a royal welcome awaits him. If he fails, then he, his troops, this town, the countryside for 50 miles or more will cease to exist.
Frightening, isn't
The
it?
Eastern Hemisphere Trade Commission building. It was vacated recently, but its occupants left behind them a monster buried deep in the cellar. They left behind the atom bomb, which Brigadier Hansing and his men must attempt to defuse at once. And now I think we should pass on to the crowds and ask their opinions. The men over there for the coach.
All right, Yates, that's enough. Kill it.
Yes, miss.
Atom bomb. But why? Who?
No one's sure. The Trade Commission building was occupied by representatives of more than 20 countries. Your guess is as good as mine.
A hostile warhead deep in the middle of our own territory.
Nice ace to have up one's sleeve.
How was it discovered?
Pure fluke. Brigadier Hansen's one of the nuclear experts. He was staging some maneuvers in this area. His instruments registered radioactivity. He pinpointed the bomb.
That explains a great deal.
I should have thought it explained everything.
So, Miss Thurston, you're here without authority, then?
I'm afraid so. If we're caught, they'll...
Shoot you.
Oh, I think a firm reproof would be more in order.
Don't kid yourself. We've already seen how trigger-happy they are. Firing squad's already been at work.
You've got to be joking.
I'm afraid not.
You mean they actually shot someone? Here in an English country town?
There is a state of emergency.
Did you hear that, Yates? Come on, we can't miss this.
Right, miss.
No, better still. You stay inside here. These two can ride with me in the front and show me the way. You can tell me more about yourself as we drive.
I say, look here.
No arguing. This could make the biggest story we've ever done. Well, come on. No time to lose.
Jenny Thurston handled the vehicle with professional skill. She drove fast, but well, following Steed's vague instructions, and at the same time listening to him explain why he was still handcuffed to Jimmy Merlin.
And so, I can't let this man go. You understand?
Sounds unbelievable to me.
No more unbelievable than what's happening to us at this moment.
No, I suppose not. It doesn't look criminal.
Don't be fooled by his looks and easy charm. They're very deceptive.
I say, I wish to the devil you wouldn't keep discussing me as though I wasn't here. It's very embarrassing.
I've only said nice things. So far.
All the same, it's embarrassing. I notice you haven't asked to hear my side of things.
You haven't got a side of things. Anything you tell Jenny will be calculated to foul up her tasks. Forget him, Jenny.
Oh, I won't do that.
Thank you.
But I will be careful. It's round this corner, isn't it?
Bad as steer at the wheel.
Well, you've got to put up with it. You can't get out and walk.
Hey, look, up ahead. Soldier. Looks like a major.
It was Major Parsons. alone, but with a drawn revolver.
What now?
Slow down. Slow down. It's about time I made myself known to the authorities.
You sure that's safe?
Don't worry. I'd have probably been sent into the area anyway. Hey, Major! I'm John Steed, security clearance KR5. Might be able to give you a hand.
No, don't stop! Come on!
Merlin suddenly stretched out a long leg and stabbed his foot over Jenny's foot on the accelerator. The van leapt forward. The wing caught the Major and sent him flying.
Drive on, I tell you!
You crazy!
You drive on! What the devil do you think you're doing? You could have killed him. That, I recognize him. That's no Major, Steve. He's no Major. What? That man is not British. His name's Paninsky. Gregor Paninsky. A cutthroat, a pirate, a mercenary. Are you sure? I'm quite sure. That man lying back there in the road unconscious is Paninsky, a Russian agent. Figure that one out, Steed.
Look up ahead. Soldier. Looks like a major.
Steed, Merlin, and Jenny Thurston, with Yates in the back of the van, were finding their way across the deserted town of St. Catherine's. Ahead was a major. It was Major Parsons, alone, but with a drawn revolver.
Slow down. It's about time I made myself known to the authorities.
You sure that's safe?
Oh, don't worry. Hey, Major. I'm John Steed, security clearance KR5. Might be able to give you a hand.
No, don't stop! No.
Merlin suddenly stretched out a long leg and stabbed his foot over Jenny's foot on the accelerator. The van leapt forward. The van caught the major and sent him flying.
Drive on, I tell you! Drive on! What the devil do you think you're doing? You could have killed him. I recognize him. That isn't a British Major, Steve. He isn't. What? That man is not British. His name is Paninsky. Gregor Paninsky. A cutthroat, a pirate, a mercenary, and a Russian agent. Figure that one out, Steed.
Episode 5 of this story, in which John Steed returns to help the unconscious Mrs. Peel, but finds she's better off sleeping through the now disastrous events of the morning after. John Steed was a very puzzled man. He now knew that the reason the town of St. Catherine's was deserted was because Brigadier Hanson's men had discovered that an atom bomb was concealed beneath the Trade Commission building. Once the bomb had been located in the dank, empty cellar, martial law had been proclaimed. Platoons of nuclear shock troops had been rushed to the area to help dismantle the bomb. Steed had been told all this by Jenny Thurston, a television news commentator who dared to stay on after the district had been evacuated. Jenny showed Steed and Merlin films of what had happened while they'd both been asleep. Steed, on his way back to Mrs. Peel in the TV van, thought he could give the troops a hand. That's why he had hailed the major. But Jimmy Merlin thought otherwise.
Merlin, you sure of this?
I'm quite sure.
You swerved the van. You might have killed him.
Many people have tried. He's a cat. He has more lives than most.
Well, come, let's go and find out. Stay here with the Yates, Jenny. We shan't be very long. Come on, Merlin.
Steed and Merlin clambered out of the van and walked hurriedly back to the unconscious form that lay near the car park.
All right, let's turn him over.
There's no doubt about it, Steed. That's Paninsky.
Now, let's search him. He may have identification.
Look, I don't care what cover he's got. I know this man.
Says here, Major Parsons, British Army. It's all the correct papers.
Well, of course they're correct. He wouldn't be walking about this place with foreign papers on, would he?
Tell you, it's him, Steed. It's Gregor Parninsky, and he's a foreign agent.
I haven't got proof of that.
You have my word.
As a double agent yourself, that doesn't count for very much.
Don't be a fool, Steed. It's because of my checkered past that I know all these people. Don't you see that? And in any case, why should I lie to you?
You are trickier than any wagon load of monkeys I've ever encountered. The sooner I contact the authorities and the sooner you're put away, the happier I'll be.
All right, have it your own way. I give up.
What's happened? Is this the man you thought it was, Jimmy?
Yes, it's him all right. But Steed doesn't believe me because he's in uniform with the correct papers. But it's Parninsky, all right.
Is this possible?
Of course it's possible. Look, infiltrate, pose as an army officer. Any skilled agent who knew his business could do it blindfold.
It is possible, I admit. But if it's true...
Then he may not be the only one.
Well...
Answer her, Steed. Tell her all about the firing squad. That's what's really been bothering you, hasn't it?
You mean the shooting of that man?
Yes. Steed doesn't believe that this country's got to that state, no matter what the emergency. Isn't that so, Steed?
Well, it is worrying, I agree.
A man was murdered, executed, shot, butchered in cold blood without a trial. Do you really think the British Army is now empowered to carry out such forms of shooting? Is this type of rough justice allowed? Well, Steed?
I admit that it doesn't fit in with all the other things I've been told.
It doesn't make sense to murder a man in cold blood without trial. Why didn't they just arrest him, ship him out of here as a criminal?
Someone may have taken the law into their own hands.
That sergeant who had a go at us?
Well, one thing is certain. We ought to let Brigadier Hanson know. If he has any more soldiers like that on his staff...
And any more majors who are suspected agents...
Oh, you do what you like. I think we should just get out of here.
We can't run out. Can we, Steed?
I thought the situation was suddenly becoming simple and straightforward. No. Right, we'll go to Hanson.
What? Steed, every street is blocked off for patrol. We'd never get near that building. We'd be taken prisoners and dealt with like that fellow Courtney.
We'll just have to keep our fingers crossed and hope we're lucky.
Lucky? Look, believe me, I'm just as confused as you are. But one thing I know. This is not going to be solved by luck. No, sir.
The three of them left the Major where he was and bundled back into the van. Yates, inside, demanded to know what was going on, but it was all too complicated to explain. Jenny started the engine and skillfully backed the van.
I think there's a side road behind the church. If I take that, I can double back and approach the commission building from the other side. That should give us a better chance.
Just a minute, Jenny. I'd like to go to Barchester Street first.
Barchester Street? Where's that?
On the other side of town.
What? What for?
I left a friend there. I've been trying to get back to her for hours. Now, that's where we're going, and no arguments.
But Steed was a little late in this decision, for Sergeant Hearn and his troopers had been scouring the near neighborhood, searching for them. They had entered the office building, and in the room marked the Poston Trading Company, they had found the sleeping form of Emma Peel. Sergeant Hearn looked down at her.
Well, what do you know? All right, men, relax.
The sergeant dropped down upon one knee and felt Mrs. Peel's pulse. Then he straightened up and moved to the table upon which lay Steed's briefcase. He snapped it open. He took from the case several papers and scrutinized them.
John Steed. The name of the joker who clobbered me. All right, men, stay out of sight. I have reason to think someone will be coming back to pick this woman up. After all, you can't blame them. I can only hope that Mr. John Steed gets here very soon.
Steed, Jimmy Merlin, Jenny, and Yates were actually on their way when...
Hold it. Look there, down that side road. Army trucks, quite a lot of them. Stop.
Don't go looking for trouble, Steve. We've got enough as it is.
Stop. I want to take a look at that lot. Might tell us something.
Jenny stayed at the wheel. Yates poked his head out of the back of the van, and they both watched as Steed and Merlin walked towards the army trucks. There was no one about. Jenny saw Steed jerk up the canvas drop that concealed the inside of the first truck and look inside. She saw him look swiftly at Merlin, and they moved to the next one. After completing the line, they hurried back.
Well, what is it? What's happened?
How many men were sent in here for the emergency, Jenny?
4 platoons.
4 platoons of nuclear shock troops?
That's right. The best. What is it? What did you find over there?
4 platoons of nuclear shock troops. All drugged, all unconscious.
What? But if they're there, then...
Then who is out at the commission building? Who is handling that atom bomb?
At the commission building, Brigadier Hanson was confronting a very distressed Major Parsons. The Major, who'd come round in the street, had staggered back and blurted out an incoherent account of how he was knocked over.
You are a fool, Major.
Yes, sir.
More than that, you are a dangerous fool. Your incompetence could jeopardize the whole operation here.
Yes, sir.
If these people were to contact the outside world...
No, they can't do that, sir. The phones are out of action, and we're jamming all radio signals.
It seems to me that they might just walk out of the area. After all, it appears they can walk the streets with complete impunity.
I was taken by surprise, sir.
Don't offer me excuses! When your people approached me, they promised me professionals, Major, professionals. Instead, I'm surrounded by rank amateurs. I want these people found, and I want them found immediately. That is an order.
The people in question had by this time arrived near the offices where Sergeant Hearn lay in wait for them. They parked the car, and all four of them walked carefully to the main entrance. There, Steed stopped and produced some keys.
I want your word of honor, Merlin.
Oh, taking these blasters things off at last, Steve. Good.
I'm only undoing the handcuffs because I think there'll be trouble.
Oh, you can rely on me, Steed. You have my word. That's better. You know, I'm touched. I'm really touched by your faith in me.
Don't be. I'm doing this because I don't want to find myself dragging around a dead man. Careful now. Right, Jenny, Yates?
Yes?
Right, Mr. Steed, lead the way.
Right.
In the upstairs room, Sergeant Hearn waved his troopers back into cover and waited. Mrs. Peel slumbered on.
Mrs. Peel? Mrs. Peel?
Still sleeping.
Come in. What now?
Well, I think we should get over to the Commissioner's building.
Get out if you ask me.
Oh, no. Stay where you are.
Take cover.
Steed dropped down to the floor, so did Jenny. Yates panicked.
I'm getting out.
Sergeant shot him in the back. As he fell to the floor, Merlin moved like lightning. He hurled a trooper across the room. Made for the door, was through it in a flash and slammed it behind him.
After him. Stay where you are, Steed. One move and you're as dead as that man on the carpet. Both of you. Hands above your head. Right now.
Now,
Yates! Yates! You killed him! Shot him down like an animal! Shot in the back!
Stay where you are, both of you. Don't move, Steed, or you'll be as dead as he is.
Merlin, he got away.
Yes, your friend wasn't feeling very brave, was he?
He always was a disappointment.
I've been looking forward to meeting you again, Steed. Pity Merlin got away, but at least I've got two of you.
Go ahead. Shoot.
It wouldn't be legal. So, you may sit down if you wish, but keep your hands up. The firing squad won't be long, and then, bang, bang. You won't have anything else to worry about, will you?
Episode 6, the final episode in this story, in which Emma Peel wakes up at last, and John Steed manages to straighten out all the puzzling activities that have been taking place during the morning after. John Steed, Jimmy Merlin, Jenny Thurston, and her driver Yates fell neatly into the trap Sergeant Hearn had set for them. They'd returned to the offices of the Poston Trading Company to find Mrs. Peel. Mrs. Peel was still there, all right, and still fast asleep. But Hearn and his men were there, too. Hearn had shot Yates as he was attempting a getaway, but Jimmy Merlin was luckier and made his escape among a flurry of gunshots. Hearn's men had given chase, firing blindly, but Merlin had a good start and dodged in and out of alleyways, heading for the car park.
I've got to get under cover. And at the same time, I must get to my car. That's the first thing. Not much further now.
Merlin doubled back, tore down a side road, and into the car park. Once there, it was easy to conceal himself and wriggle his way to where his own car stood. He froze as voices approached.
He went this way, headed into the car park.
I don't think so. He went around the back, over there.
Merlin dropped to the ground and squeezed himself under his car. He saw army boots approach, heard voices, foreign voices.
We must not fail. If we do, it will not go well with us.
He could have made for the other entrance and the exit over there.
Merlin waited until the footsteps had died away, and then scrambled from under the car, unlocked the door, and sank with a sigh of relief into the driver's seat. He inserted the key in the ignition, and then a thoughtful look came over his face. He reached back under the seat and withdrew a small suitcase marked J. Merlin. He opened it, peered inside, seemed pleased with what he saw, closed the case, and then made a decision. With a broad smile, he opened the car door and, carrying the case, weaved his way silently amongst the cars, heading back the way he'd come, back to the Poston Trading Company. Back in those offices, Steed was doing a bit of deep thinking.
Harold Courtney.
What? What's that, Steed?
What are you talking about, Steed? No, keep your hands up.
The man you shot, Harold Courtney. I thought I knew the name. He was a member of the Nuclear Fission Committee. Atom bomb expert. Now, why should he stay on in the area?
Curiosity?
That, or he sensed something was wrong. The area cleared and fake troops move in.
But what about the team who are dismantling the bomb?
Dismantling it? Are they?
You cotton on fast, Steed. We're not taking the bomb apart. We're putting it together.
What? You're building a bomb?
It makes a sort of twisted sense, doesn't it, Jenny? The area's declared clear, everyone moves back in, and then...
Then the government pays up. We make our demand, pay up, or else.
And in the commission building, the brigadier was pacing to and fro in the cellar.
Well, how's it going, Major?
Nearly finished, sir. The crew are just putting the finishing touches to the installation. They'll screw the large metal plate into position as a cover, and then all is ready.
Well, hurry it up. We're nearly all ready.
And when we are, I shall personally issue the ultimatum. I should like to see their faces when they hear how Brigadier Montague Hanson has outwitted them at last.
Jenny Thurston had never been in such a frightening position, but she refused to be cowed by the burly sergeant who had a gun pointed at her and John Steed.
Tell me something, Sergeant. A purely professional question from a newswoman. Who exactly are you?
We might say that we are all mercenaries. Quite cleverly directed mercenaries. The plan was so simple. We declared a state of emergency. They cleared the area to allow us to bring our apparatus in. They assisted us, in fact. Now, well, everyone believes we're heroes. That gives our demand more weight.
What do you mean, more weight?
This is a dummy run, Jenny.
You catch on fast, Steed. It took a long time to evacuate the area. A long time. And the authorities know that.
I still don't understand.
Once the bomb is installed and ready to trigger off, you'll sound the all clear. Isn't that right?
Correct.
The people will come back, pouring back into their homes all over this area.
And when they are here, every one of them home, that's when we tell them to pay up. We'll give them just 15 minutes to hand over 20 millions.
And if they don't, you'll detonate the bomb?
They'll pay up.
They already know how long it took to clear the area.
A lot longer than 15 minutes. 20 millions. That'll mean there'll be a cut for everyone. Not all equal, you understand. The Brigadier will get the lion's share.
The Brigadier? A man of his standing involved in a thing like this? Why? Why and how?
Pique. Anyway, that's what the other chaps say. Pique. Bitterness. Anger. He's been told he's going to be replaced, made redundant, by a computer. A machine. It's a lot for a man of his experience to swallow. Kicked out of the service to make room for a machine. Of course, the money's a big incentive too. But it's the machine bit that really gets him. Oh, well, I think we've waited long enough. Come on your feet. We'll find them.
I do wish you'd make up your mind.
I have. I don't suppose you've got any preference where your execution takes place?
Why don't you get it over with?
Outside, then. Quickly. Come along there.
At that moment, several things happened at once. Steed stepped between Hearn and Jenny. Mrs. Peel woke up at last, and the door opened.
What's going on?
Stay where you are!
Hands up! No!
What the devil?
Mrs. Peel, wide awake in a second, took in the situation at a glance, shot forward, collared Hearn and threw him across the room just as Jimmy Merlin appeared in the doorway with another gas capsule. Steed's warning came too late. The capsule spun out of Merlin's hand and broke on the floor, right under Mrs. Peel's nose. Mrs. Peel gave a smile of triumph, appealed to Steed for approval, and never reached the end of the sentence.
How was that, Steed? Did I help you out of a little...
Quick, get out! Get out of here! Out, Jenny! Monat, out!
Sorry, Steed. I thought I was doing the right thing.
I thought I'd seen the last of you.
I couldn't do that. Bad for business. You might have spit it around that I was unreliable. Besides, it seemed a shame not to put those capsules to good use.
You had more than one. You were intent on selling the exclusive rights to as many people as possible.
You know me, Steed. Cautious. Do you blame me?
You got more in there?
Oh, yes, but... Hey, yeah.
I'm confiscating them. Jenny, you stay here. Keep an eye on this room and don't go in, for heaven's sake. Guard it here.
Right. Where are you off to?
The commission building.
Oh, now, look here, Steed. Look, I've done my Boy Scout bit.
Come on, Merlin. You gave me your word.
Oh, that's before I knew you were intent on murder. My murder.
I need you, Merlin. I'm depending on you.
But you know me. I'm probably the most undependable person in the Western Hemisphere.
You came back.
I told you why.
You didn't want me to spread rumors about you. I couldn't have done that if I were dead. So you saved my life for what?
You're trying to blind me with semantics. All right, point me towards the jaws of death. Let's get going.
In the cellar of the commission building, Brigadier Hanson had finished all his preparations.
Excellent, Major. It'll take 'em more than an hour to cut through that lot, and they won't have that much time. All right, let's tear up and get out of here.
The men were all ready to leave the cellar when Steed and Merlin appeared at the top of the stairs.
Just in time, it seems, Merlin.
Let's give him one to start with.
Take cover, men! Take cover! Open fire there at the top of the stairs!
2 or 3 more should lay enough for days.
Cover your face, Steed. There's enough gas down here to knock out. Slick passage.
Right. Hey, listen.
A short time later, back at the Poston Trading Co. offices...
Well, what happened, Steed?
Unless our friends walk in their sleep, it's all over, Jenny.
I've got to get back with this story. Anyone coming with me?
I suppose you'd better get out my handcuffs again, Steve.
Jimmy, if I don't, will you promise me to stay out of trouble?
You have my word as an honest man. Thanks, Steed. I won't forget this. Thanks a lot. Come on, Jenny, let's get to know each other a little better. Bye, Steed.
Bye, Steve.
Goodbye? Oh, no. Au revoir. Mrs. Peel? Mrs. Peel?
Ooh. Oh. I feel as though I've slept for a week. Hello, Steed. Anything exciting happening yet?
No. All peaceful. Come on, let's get out of here.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers. The Avengers. Donald Monat as John Steed and Diane Appleby as Emma Peel is adapted and directed by Denis Folbigge and produced by David Gooden.